Oh, yeah. Welcome in, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me here again on Cream of the Crop, a fantasy hockey podcast presented by Apples and Ginos. And today I've got an amazing guest here. Actually, what am I doing? Before I get to that, my name is Blake Creamer. I'm the host here. Follow me over on Twitter /X at Blake Creamer AG. And now I want to introduce this legend I've got here joining me today. He's an NHL writer for The Score, and he's got a beautiful head of hair covered up by a hat today. That's fine. Josh Wegman, how are you doing, my man? Thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm great, Blake. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
All right. Yeah, no, you're doing some fine work over there. I love The Score, actually. That's my go-to. That's what I got on my phone, and that's where I get all my scores really quick. It's not just a clever name, right, Josh?
Of course, yeah. It's free also, no subscriptions or anything.
Free. Oh, but it's just what that's a nice sell job there. I want to get some kickbacks from The Score after this. But we'll talk about that offline. Anyways, let's move on. Buddy, we were just talking a little bit offline here, but the season's finally over. My God, it was this is the longest I can remember in the last few years where the season's gone on. Like, we're almost in July here. What does this look like for you? I mean, this is a crazy time of year. Are you getting any time off, or is it just on to the next with the draft and free agency coming up?
It's definitely a hectic time of year, but if you're really deep into this like we are, I think it's really fun. All this player movement happening between the draft and trades leading up to free agency and then free agency itself. It's a really fun week. So much goes on after July 1st, things kind of die down a little bit, but this week is just a lot of fun.
Yeah. I have this feeling that it's just going to be ludicrous here this week. I don't know why. With the cap going up a little bit, and yeah, it's just there's this weird kind of energy, right? And with the draft coming up, that's so exciting too. In Vegas, oh man, I tried to get some of my fantasy hockey buddies to go up there with me, but they all have responsibilities at home, families, all right, and I have that too. But you got to do what you got to do, right? Yeah. But anyways, how did you find these playoffs here? Because talking about that, obviously, it was crazy that Florida came out 3-0 lead there, and then Edmonton almost completed the reverse sweep, but just ultimately ran out of gas. What were some of your overall takeaways from this year's playoffs?
They were fantastic. Obviously, to me, the best part of the playoffs is always the first round, where there's just 3 or 4 games every single night, and it's just crazy game after crazy game. And I feel like that first round too, you can really tell the intensity ramping up. You can see it between the first round of the playoffs and the regular season. Everyone's finishing their checks. The game's just faster. So to me, that's my favorite part. But the Stanley Cup final, like you said, did not disappoint either. Oilers clawing back. I really thought once they evened it up, they would take game 7, but Florida really bared down and played their best game of the Cup final there to win it all. So kudos to them. Put on a defensive clinic there. I don't know if I have any obvious takeaways from the playoffs. Just make smart moves when you're building your team. Same can go for fantasy managers. Just trust the process, I guess. Because Florida has been sort of going all out and building this team the last few years. I think it was a few deadlines ago, they traded away all those picks and made all these moves, and it didn't work out, but they sort of just stuck with it, and here they are on top.
Yeah, it was really cool to see, man. And I'm with you. The first round, that's just elite sports right there. That's what we love about sports, is the first round of the playoffs. It's such a crazy trophy to win the Stanley Cup. I know it's cliche. I know everyone says. I know Gary Bettman said it. Oh man, but it's the hardest. And then the Edmonton Oilers, they came out with their media today. Basically, yeah, Leon Draisaitl's been injured. Connor McDavid might have to have surgery in the offseason. And these guys are out there flying around doing stuff. It's literally a game of luck at that point. It's attrition. Who can survive, the gauntlet of these NHL playoffs? And, that's kind of what happened to Florida last year, isn't it? With guys like Tkachuk and Montour getting injured.
Yeah, they had guys really banged up. Every team, again, it's so cliche, but every team that's making it this far always is going to have guys banged up. But yeah, there's certain players you can tell who are physically laboring a bit. They don't look quite right. To me, Draisaitl in the Cup final didn't really look like himself. So you kind of knew there was something going on there. And then, the rib and hand injuries that would not be fun to play through in such a physical sport.
Yeah, absolutely. But cool stuff anyway. I mean, these guys are warriors. But, just on the playoffs, one more thing before we get into some of the news here. Do you think that, and I'll preface this, I did get this question from you offline, so I'm going to do it online. This is a fantasy hockey podcast, and I just want to know kind of your level of fantasy hockey knowledge and kind of where you're at with that.
Yeah, so I'm in 2 fantasy hockey leagues every year for the most part. I'm in like a redraft league with some colleagues, and then I have a keeper league with some friends. So that keeps me pretty occupied. I find if I'm in more than 2, then my interest will start to wane in like one of them. Like I think 2 to me is the perfect amount. I know some people are in like 5 or 6. To me, that's like too much to keep track of. But,
5 or 6, that's child's play. All right. I was in 10 last year. Oh my God. And 2 basketball ones. I do not recommend that. That is terrible. All right. Do what Josh says. Don't do what I'm saying. All right. That's the smart way to do it.
10 is crazy.
It doesn't make any sense. You don't even know what you're doing. I had a good season though. It wasn't too bad. But how did you do in your 2 leagues there?
I think I won one of them, and the other I lost at some point in the playoffs. I don't know. It was a pretty successful year, I guess. But
sweet.
Yeah, I've been sorry to cut you off there. Yeah, when I started at the Score 8 years ago now, it was with we had first a daily fantasy department, and then it turned into a fantasy department. So I was doing a lot of fantasy hockey advice there for the first few years before I switched over to just strictly NHL. And I still do some of I put together our draft kit, our fantasy hockey draft kit, along with my colleagues. So I still dabble in a bit of the fantasy, but it's mostly just generic, standard NHL stuff now.
Yeah, I love that, buddy. I actually didn't know you were involved in the draft kit. That's excellent because the Score does an amazing fantasy hockey draft kit. So, buddy, thank you for your service. All right, that's excellent work. So, on that, so we got a fantasy expert here as well. So, last thing on the playoffs, do you think that some of these playoff performances that we saw here from guys like even like Wyatt Johnston or Anton Lundell, Panthers, or even Bouchard, like, do you think that some of those performances translate into regular season success moving forward? Because that's something I'm always sort of looking at, after the playoffs, like who performed well when, they needed a win, and what does that mean going into next season? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely think there's something to that. I think the playoffs can sort of serve as a coming out party for some players. And I think one guy you just brought up there, I think Wyatt Johnston is a great example. To me, he looked to take another step to his game in the playoffs. And, it's not just how you play in the playoffs for going forward. Certain things have to open up. And in Dallas, Matt Duchene's a free agent, so there could be a little bit more ice time for him there. I mean, Joe Pavelski is probably retiring, he said. So, that could open up more time on the power play for Johnston. So I think everything is trending up with him there. Lundell, I do like a lot, but I think his opportunity will still be a little blocked as long as they don't make any drastic changes. I mean, Barkov's not going anywhere. Sam Bennett is still that number 2 center. I mean, him and Lundell could flip-flop a little bit, but I think Johnston's ceiling is super high.
Yeah, that's a player we're excited about here. And we've been talking about all year, and it looks like, it's going to come to fruition, but come fantasy time, I think he's probably going to be overvalued in our drafts, unfortunately, but I might still try and get him. Dang, he looks good out there, but all right. Well, that's good. Thank you, Josh, for that. We do have a lot to talk about, and I really appreciate your time. So let's get into some fantasy news here, or not fantasy news, just NHL news in general. Lots of stuff going on here, and let's start with the NHL draft. You and your colleagues there at the Score, Kyle Cushman, Nick Ferris, and John Matisse, just did a mock draft of what you think the first 32 picks are going to look like. And that's on the score.ca, everybody. Shout out to them. Do you think, based on even that list, do you think there are any players from that 32 that can come in besides Macklin, Celebrini, and impact the NHL right away when they come in? And maybe even as soon as next season?
Yeah, honestly, I'm not entirely sure. Obviously, Celebrini, I think, is like a lock to play at 18. Maybe Levshinov would, but I don't know how much of an impact he would be from like a redraft fantasy perspective. Obviously, a guy you'd want to scoop up in your keeper leagues. But for redraft, I would say Celebrini's probably the only one to target. Obviously, you never know. I don't know if Salayev would play as an 18-year-old, but he could be a guy who gets lots of hits and blocks. I know he's like 6'7", so
he's a
that
beaver.
could be. Yeah. So he's not going to provide much offense even when he's in his prime in the NHL. I mean, so the scouts think. So, yeah, other than Celebrini, I don't think there's going to be anyone who are going to be must-own players in redraft leagues. But
Yeah,
obviously keeper leagues is a whole different story.
Yeah, for sure. And on Celebrini, what do you think his potential is fantasy wise, like moving into this season? Do you think, like, obviously he's going to get run there in San Jose because they don't really have anybody else, and they also have Will Smith signed to his entry level contract now, so that's a nice little tandem. Plus, I mean, William Eklund, Zetterberg in there, or Zetterlund, sorry, Zetterberg. Yeah, like they've got some really nice pieces there, but they're just so young, aren't they, in San Jose? And now they got 36-year-old new head coach Ryan. What's his name? Warsofsky. I don't remember.
Yeah, Warsofsky.
Oh, that was a guess, and that was a good guess. But yeah, like they're just young all around. What do you think Celebrini is capable of next season, and just the Sharks in general?
I mean, the Sharks are going to be terrible again next season. That's for sure.
Oh,
we all know that. But I do like the Warsofsky hire in the sense that you're just bringing a young, like, innovative guy who was really successful in the AHL and seemed to do some good work as an assistant coach with the Sharks. I mean, I think he was running their penalty kill, which was like surprisingly close to mediocre considering how bad their team was. So if you
I think it was 18th actually. I looked that up. So yeah, that's not too terrible for pretty much the worst team I've ever seen in my life.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the Sharks being so bad does play into Celebrini's favor a bit, though. Like you said, like he's going to be the number one center. He's going to be on the top power play unit. I mean, that makes it tough for him. He's going to get a lot of tough matchups, kind of like Bedard did this past year. And I don't think Celebrini's quite as good as Bedard, but I could see a similar type of rookie season, maybe 20 to 30 goals, maybe 60 points, something like that. So, I mean, going forward, his ceiling is obviously tremendously high, and he's such a well-rounded player. But I think he will adapt to the pros relatively well as a rookie.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Sharks have another pick too. They got pick 14, and in your guys' article there, you had them taking Adam Juracek. Do you think that's something like, is Juracek a guy that could come right in, or is he still needs some seasoning at the minors there?
Yeah, I think whoever they take with that pick is going to take at least a year, maybe two. If it's a defenseman like Juracek, maybe closer to 2 or 3. Defensemen take a little longer to develop. So we did a mock before that, and we had them taking Cole Yzerman. That's a guy who, very intriguing player, especially for fantasy. If he went to San Jose, that'd be a lot of fun. And I think he could maybe be a guy who is 1 year and then in the NHL potentially, just based on what he does so well, and that's scoring goals. So, yeah, but I think most likely if they're taking a D there, that D's going to take a bit of time to get on the fantasy radar.
It's so strange to me, just on the Sharks, and I don't want to digress a little bit here, but like, how in the hell did they even sell that team to their fan base last year? Like, at points, remember that section of the season where it was like they got pumped 10-0 like 2 times in like a 3-week period? Is like, what is this? Like, Mike Greer, what's happening here? And it didn't get any better, right? But when you look at the cupboards and how they've sort of stocked them up, and obviously the way that Eklund finished the season is really promising. A guy like Henry Thrun as well, I think, is someone who could get a little bit of run, maybe on power play too. I don't know, he's going to need a lot more ice time, but it's not as bleak there, is it?
Yeah, and I think they'll add like some pieces this offseason. Nothing crazy. I don't think they're going to sign any of the top free agents, but I mean, they'll bring in some veterans. You would hope to insulate some of the younger players they have coming through, like Celebrini and Smith. And I mean, they already added Jake Walman. That was a really good trade and a really strange one for Detroit, sending Walman and a second-round pick to San Jose for future considerations. But I do like that for fantasy in terms of Walman. I mean, he's a guy with some offensive ability. As of right now, I would guess he's quarterbacking power play 1 there. So that's any power play 1 quarterback is likely going to be rostered in fantasy. So I think Walman could have some intrigue there. Again, a guy who could play a ton of minutes because the team's pretty bad. And, they could trade Mario Ferraro. So a lot going on there. But yeah, Walman's a guy to look at, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And, peripherally as well in category leagues, like this guy had 151 blocks in 63 games last year. What the hell?
That's a lot.
What do his legs look like? Just look like, eggplants all the way down, just bruised, terrible. I don't know. But yeah, this is an interesting piece for sure because Walman is a defenseman that can score, right? 12 goals he had last year, with pretty much not a sniff of power play time. So, and he does a gritty. All right. And I ain't hating that. Right. He scores and then he gritties. All right. He does it every time. He probably did it 12 times. I don't know. But yeah, I like that a lot there. And I was going to ask you about that. What does this mean for Detroit? Because that is such a strange trade. Obviously, they're clearing some cap space. It's been touted as a cap dump, really. But Walman's salary was like 3.4 AAV. So it's interesting, like that they would get rid of a player with this type of potential and skill set. He's good to go, and he's good to go for cheap. So they obviously included that second round pick to dump the cap. So San Jose would take it. What is Detroit up to, in your opinion?
I mean, I would hope Yzerman's got something up his sleeve. I mean, otherwise, even if he does have something up his sleeve, this trade to me makes no sense because I don't think Walman at, what did you say, 3.4 million or some 3.2 million. I don't think he's like a negative asset at that cap hit. I know certain players at that cap hit can be a negative asset. I don't think he's one of them. Like he's clearly, maybe he's not a top four. Maybe he's more of a third pairing guy who you play some sheltered minutes and get him on the power play here and there because he's really good offensively. But, packaging a second round pick just to get rid of him seems very extreme, and good on the Sharks for jumping on that. But I would assume Detroit's got something cooking there. There's no like superstar defenseman in free agency, but there's a lot of really good options. I've seen some people connect Matt Roy to Detroit because he's from the Michigan area there. So maybe that's something that Yzerman is looking at. But yeah, it's a really bizarre move.
Yeah, definitely. I like that. Matt Roy to Detroit. That's a guy I'm low-key interested in, like late in drafts, especially like a 14 teamer or something like that. Like this is a guy that can do stuff, and he's almost like a better version of Walman, Matt Roy to me. So that would be interesting. But obviously, Sider has to get signed as well there, so they're gonna roll up the Brinks truck and pay that man. So that'll be nice too. But yeah, just a bizarre move. You got to think something's on the horizon there for Detroit.
Yeah, they signed Lucas Raymond too. So both their big RFAs.
Yeah. So lots going on there. The Yzer plan. I mean, do we trust this? I don't know. But that's fine. Let's move on. This has become a San Jose Sharks podcast. So that's great. We just spent 50 minutes talking about the worst team I've ever seen. How about this trade from Boston and Ottawa, this Linus Ullmark to the Sens? I'm not going to give the whole trade here, but they end up sending Korpisalo back to the Bruins there. What are your initial thoughts? Because this is... Obviously, Linus Ullmark had a season for the ages 2 years ago, winning the Vezina. His numbers were ridiculous. I was just looking too. His goals saved above average in that year, which was 2022-23, 48.8. But like zero is like, that's average, right? 48.8. Oh my God. That's wild stuff. And he had a great year last year too. 22 wins, 10 losses, but he's going from a team that's really defensively sound. I mean, the Bruins, I think, were sixth best in goals against, going to the Ottawa Senators team, who are seventh worst in goals against. So what does this look like just for both players, Ullmark, and then, maybe an outlook on Korpisalo as well?
I mean, it's good for Ottawa. I mean, it's a bit of a steep price giving, a first round pick for a goalie who's a pending free agent. I'm sure they're going to do their best to sign him. But, they really needed to fix that goaltending situation. It was just so bad this past year. I mean, if they got league average goaltending, maybe Ottawa's in the playoffs, maybe. So I think Ullmark should be able to give them at least that. I think from a fantasy perspective, I mean, Ullmark's rate stats are probably going to go down again because he's playing on a worse team, but he's also going to be playing more, so you'll get him in your lineup more. But also playing more could make him less effective.
Yep.
I guess potentially, with that bigger workload. So some question marks there. I still think he'd be a solid fantasy option. I think he'll be, solid in reality for Ottawa, but there's some unknown there. I mean, I don't think Ullmark's ever really been that workhorse guy. In Boston, it was always splitting time with Swayman. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. With Korpisalo, though, I actually think there's like an interesting buy low or like just take him super late in your drafts type of option here. Because I know Boston's always done the goalie split. You'd have to think Swayman will play at least 50 games now, and but 30 games out of Korpisalo with a team with really good defensive structure in front of them. And, Korpisalo's been up and down, but he's had some really good years. And I think Boston is almost a perfect place for him to get back on track. So definitely some intrigue there.
Yeah, Korpisalo really cashed in on that time that he spent in LA, didn't he? Because his numbers were terrible with Columbus that year, but then he gets traded to LA, which is a much better goalie environment. And of course, he succeeds in that environment, right? And so he parlayed that into this contract that he got with the Senators. But the Senators are not the LA Kings, right? And it just, it was gross in Ottawa this year. Like, they got terrible goaltending for sure, but also their systems. Like, it just is not an environment, a defensive environment. And then, usually when you make a coaching change in the middle of the year, that equals a little bump. Well, they got worse under Jacques Martin, which was so bizarre. So what do you think that Travis Green brings to the situation there? Because I know just from being a Canucks fan, like, Travis Green, definitely a structured coach. He's really upfront with the players. So those are things right off the bat. But you got to think that this is going to equal a net positive, at least defensively, for the Senators coming up here.
Yeah, a coaching change was, so long overdue. Like, to me, DJ Smith shouldn't have even gone into this year with the Sens coaching job. I know the ownership situation made that a little tricky. They were in the midst of that ownership change, but Travis Green can't be really any worse. I was a little, for the Sens, I was a little let down by that hire a tad. I just thought they would try and get someone a little more distinguished, someone with a bit of a better resume. I like Travis Green and I like he seems to bring, but that track record isn't quite there. I know he had like 1 year with the Canucks where they went kind of deep, but otherwise their team defensive numbers weren't amazing or anything like that. Again, I know a lot of that was from the GM, Jim Benning, making some poor moves, but I don't know. It's not like the most optimistic hire. But he should improve the team a little bit at least. And the defense there in Ottawa is in place. Like, they have a lot of like intriguing defensemen, and there's been rumors they want to go after Chris Tanev or someone like that. So if they can get another like really sound defensive defenseman and Green can get the players to buy in, I think they could be at least a league average defensive team. And with Allmark in net, he could be really solid again.
Yeah, there should be some hope for Ottawa, that's for sure. Like, this could be a borderline playoff team, right? Or a wild card team, if everything goes right. Obviously, it's hard to predict that because we haven't seen them play one game under Travis Green. But one thing I like about Travis Green, and I did notice this with Tocchet in Vancouver, and I think Green and Tocchet are similar style coaches, is that Tocchet got the best out of JT Miller, who's, a bit of a dingus, as we know. I think that there are some players on the Senators and, namely Brady Tkachuk. Like, I think that Travis Green can really get a good season out of Brady Tkachuk, who's already played some amazing hockey. But Brady Tkachuk's a player I'm obviously always going to be interested in fantasy in any format. It doesn't matter. But now that he's just seen his, brother win the Stanley Cup and just how he was sort of reacting to that, that's a player that I think is really going to benefit from Travis Green's tutelage, if you will. So I don't know. Do you think there's any does that hold any water there?
Yeah, absolutely. And Brady's such a beast in fantasy with the hits and the shots, and if you play with penalty minutes, he gets that too. So he's kind of a jack of all trades type of guy in fantasy, right? So, I think, Brady's the captain there, but I could see him taking even more proactive leadership role. Especially, this could be Giroux's last year in Ottawa. So I know he's on the last year of his deal. We'll see what happens there. But for them, it's all about the defense. The offense has always kind of been there, right? Like, the talent, the offensive skill, and the ability to put the puck in the net, that's never really been a concern to me anyway. So it's just a matter of whether the team itself can buy in and play a solid team defense. That's really going to be the X factor. And then can they get saves or not? When they do play solid team defense, can they get the saves? Because, if you're not getting the saves, then that brings the whole team down. It's hard to play as hard when you're not getting even routine saves, right? So that'll be what it comes down to for Ottawa.
Yep. No, I absolutely agree with that, my man. All right, let's move on. I know you're in Toronto there, or where are you located right now, Josh?
Yeah, I'm in Toronto.
Okay. Is that your team, the Leafs?
I am, unfortunately, yes, a
Yeah.
long-time Leafs supporter. It's not easy.
Oh, I'm with you, man. I'm a Canucks supporter. All right. We should be together on this. All right. So that's good. Because I like the Leafs too. Actually, I really like the Leafs. I think, Austin Matthews. Oh my God. That's just because I'm so big into fantasy. I started liking other teams a lot more. Like in the early 2000s, I was like, F the Leafs. Like, no, this is terrible. Yeah. Right. But now I'm like, yeah, I love any team that has these amazing offensive stars. So anyways, that's a digression. But talk to me a little bit. The Leafs have done some work here, and there's lots of phone calls being made in the background. First off, Joseph Woll was extended there in Toronto. What do you think about Joseph Woll in particular, and what do you think their plan is this season? I mean, there's been some rumblings that they missed out on Markstrom, they missed out on Ullmark, and they might be looking to do like a tandem goalie situation. Do you have any kind of thoughts on Joseph Woll and what they might do at the goalie position?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Joseph Woll. I mean, when he's been healthy, he looks really calm. He looks legit. He looks like a guy who can be a number one goalie in the NHL. The only thing is, can he stay healthy? And this could be a thing. Is he just injury prone, or has it just been a little string of bad luck? I guess we'll find out. But I think the Leafs are banking on him, hoping he can play at least 40 games next year. I think that's the hope. I know they were reportedly the runners up to Markstrom. I think that was probably it in terms of the big game hunting for goaltending. Like, I know there's maybe a couple other guys out there. Maybe there's Saros, but I think they're more going to look at some kind of tandem option, maybe a Cam Talbot, or maybe Anthony Stolars, or Laurent Brossoit, someone like that, I would guess. And they'll kind of ride the hot hand. Maybe they'll add a veteran third goalie and carry a third goalie for most of the year. I think that'd be pretty wise, just based off Woll's unpredictable health. And if you're signing a goalie for cheap, I guess you don't know entirely what you're going to get out of them. So yep. I think three goalies would make sense. But yeah, I think they're hoping Woll is going to be that guy and play 40 to 50 games next year.
Yeah, I really think from what I've seen, like he's got it. He, like you said, just obviously the ability to stay healthy. And it's easy to say out here, like that position, it doesn't even make sense to me. Like, you're down on your knees and you're like our bodies aren't meant to move that way. What is happening? And, but I mean, I think this guy's got a bright future, and I love the signing. I think, yeah, that could be a really low key option for, if you're going to do a 0G draft strategy, or, a goalie you can get a little bit later, that you'll have to supplement with another goalie as well. Because like you said, I think 40 to 50 games is like best case scenario for Joseph Woll. That's if he's healthy. So, who I'd like to see them sign, and this is a player I've been just hearing more and more about, Kevin Lankinen. I think that is a player. I've just heard so many good things just about his process and his actual skill level. And obviously he's behind one of the best goalies in the world in Nashville there, but he's a free agent this year. Would that be someone that the Leafs would maybe target?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Lankinen would make a lot of sense. And I think he's on the younger side of free agents as far as they go. Like, I think he's still 28 or 29. So,
yep.
His best hockey could still be ahead of him. And again, for a guy who was behind like one of the NHL's biggest workhorses last year in Saros, he still does have a fair amount of experience. When he was with Chicago, I think he was playing a good chunk of games on some bad teams. So there's some experience there. But yeah, I do think whoever that second goalie that the Leafs get will hold some value, especially if you're a Joseph Woll manager. I mean, you can just get that tandem and kind of lock it up. And even if one of them gets hurt or one of them runs away with the job, then you can bank on the Leafs being a playoff team again and winning quite a few games, regardless of, even though they always disappoint in the playoffs, they always bring it in the regular season, right? They're always up there in terms of in the standings. So, I think Lankinen would be a a good option though.
It's rough stuff, man. I'm an empathetic person, and what the Leafs are going through currently, and Leafs fans, I feel you, man. That show ain't no good. Yeah, I was surprised this year that they kind of went out the way they did, after what they were able to accomplish last year. So it's too bad. But I mean, when you got that kind of talent on the team, you're always going to be in contention. I really think they just got to get over the hump here, and they know how to lose now. So, they've mapped that out. So let's move forward. But obviously lots of fun stuff in Leafland coming up here. Interesting stuff like the coaching change, Craig Berube, obviously in over Sheldon Keefe. That should be, an interesting change there. How do you think that's going to change the way the Leafs play?
I think Berube is just going to hold players accountable a lot better than Keefe did. I mean, I think Keefe is a good coach, but I think it was also time for him to go in Toronto. Coaches have such a short shelf life, and eventually the message from one guy just gets kind of stale. So I think Berube was a pretty good hire considering what was out there. I mean, he was arguably the best coach available. So yeah, Berube is going to hold guys accountable. I think he's going to try and get people to buy in. He's more of a motivator than an X's and O's guy, a former enforcer, but I think he's done a good job with his assistant coach hires. Lane Lambert is a pretty savvy defensive mind, being under Barry Trotz for all those years. Yep. And with NHL head coaching experience, that's always a plus in an assistant. And then bringing in Mark Savard too, that's, to run the power play. I like that move. He's a guy who's had success as an assistant under Berube. And he's obviously a guy, from his playing days, was a really creative and fun offensive player. So I think if anything, he should help that power play with Matthews, Nylander, and Tavares, and maybe Marner if he's still there. Right. So
that's right. Well, let's talk about this man, Mitchell Marner. Obviously he holds all the cards there. I've been reading lots about Mitch Marner. He's got a no movement clause. So for anything to get done, he has to okay it. And yeah, there's just so many obstacles in the way there. Do you think there's a chance that he does get moved, or is it more likely that he just stays with the Leafs this year and they run it back?
I think there's a chance. I would say there's a better chance that he stays, but I still think it's possible that he gets moved. I'm not giving you much here, but like you said, the no movement clause is one thing, but it's also finding a trade partner that A, has the cap space to take Marner this year, B, has the cap space to sign Marner to an extension that includes a raise, and C, has the assets that Toronto might want back, right? Like that's either, to me, a package that includes a young center or a young controllable defenseman. So I don't see a lot of teams out there that potentially have all three. I know Nashville has maybe been a team that people has floated out there. See, I just don't see it because Nashville has sort of that internal cap structure where it's like, okay, no one's going to make more than Yossi. He's our captain franchise player. So I can't see an extension getting done there.
Yep.
One team I could maybe see is Anaheim, just because they have a lot of young pieces. They're kind of looking to make that push forward and get over the hump. They have lots of cap space. So if he was going to be traded anywhere, my money would be on Anaheim, but I'd say there's still a better chance he stays with the Leafs than goes anywhere.
Yeah, I think too, just as a competitor, like you want the best chance to win. Like going to a team like Anaheim or Utah or Chicago, it's like a lottery ticket, right? And and I think those windows of winning don't really line up. You know what I mean? Like what's Marner, like 27, like he's good to go, right? This is a 100-point guy every year. So I'd be surprised if it happens, but if it did happen, that would be some news, man. Like wherever he goes, if he does get traded, like that's a really nice piece. This guy's always going to be fantasy relevant. He's an elite player and massively underrated defensively. Like he's excellent at that. So anyways, that's a player I'm into for sure, but that's enough Leaf talk. All right. But lots of fun stuff in the off season for them. I want to get your thoughts on one more piece of news here. And then I'd like to quickly run through some free agent stuff with you really quick. So Pierre-Luc Dubois for Darcy Kuemper. That was a 1-for-1 trade that kind of shook things up a little bit there. PLD going to Washington and Kuemper going to LA. LA was able to get out from under the Dubois contract there before it kicked in. What are your initial thoughts on that? And is this kind of a net positive for both players? Yeah,
that trade was super shocking, like you said. from a reality, like a real life standpoint, I like it a lot more for Washington. Both teams are taking on some bad contracts, but at least with the Capitals, you have some upside in Dubois. Even if he never becomes like a true like star player, he can be that solid like 60-point, 65-point second line center. So I think there's just a lot more upside there. Well, Kuemper's kind of old, but from a fantasy perspective, I feel like it's a great landing spot for each player. With PLD, he goes from, kind of being an afterthought with the Kings, where he was a third line center. He went there. He probably didn't feel super important just based on the role he was playing. So that might have played a part in his, he didn't handle it well, clearly either, but that might have played a part in his lack of production. In Washington, Kuznetsov's gone. Backstrom is probably done. So it's Dubois and Strome down the middle as the 1-2 punch. I would probably say Dubois has a bit of an upper hand there on Strome, in my opinion. So he could get those top line minutes, could get top power play time, that big role. I could see him having a big bounce back year. And, with Kuemper, he was really bad last year. He's kind of old now, lost his job to Charlie Lindgren, but LA is so good defensively. Again, a lot can change in the summer. And we already mentioned Matt Roy as a free agent. That'd be a really good defensive defenseman they could lose. But historically, their structure is really strong, and it's been a pretty goalie-friendly environment. Cam Talbot and David Riddick both had like plus 910 save percentages last year. We already talked about Korpisalo the year before playing really well, and like Phoenix Copley has been okay there. So I could, even though Kemper's old, I could see him again having a big bounce back. I don't think he can play, over 50 games anymore, but maybe if he pairs with Riddick, or they find another goalie they bring in to pair with Kuemper, it could have the potential to be a really good tandem for fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely. They're goalie makers over there. I love that. It's so funny when I like the relative age in sports, right? Like we're saying this guy's old, and I would agree. I'm 44, all right, and he's 34. I could have been this guy's babysitter, for God's sake, and he's old man Withers out there on the, that's fine. But I'm excited about Kuemper. I think that he's a better goalie than Talbot, and he's a better goalie than Riddick. Will he be able to kind of play within the LA system, and how does that system change, right? We heard some rumblings from Kevin Fiala, and others about the kind of the structure that they play with there and how it sort of caps their creativity a little bit. And, that was under McClellan. And then obviously we got Hiller there, who was the assistant. I'm wondering how things are going to change moving forward, but I tend to think they are going to try and be a little bit more offensive moving forward, and maybe at the, and maybe that causes a little bit less of a goalie friendly environment. So who knows? But I do think that Kuemper is an upgrade on what they had there in LA. So I'm excited about that. All right, my man. Do you have time for a few minutes of free agent stuff?
Yeah, of course.
Let's get to biz. Oh yeah. Okay. Let's talk about some of the free agents that are still on the board here. And disclaimer here, Josh is going to be putting out a great article on his free agency predictions. So we don't want to step on the toes of that too much. That's going to be coming out this weekend here. So keep your eyes out for that on the score. But we are going to, try and extrapolate and extract as much information from this expert as we possibly can. So let's do that. Let's start with who the first probably the best free agent on the market is. Stanley Cup winner and a man I have dubbed the Sex Panther, Sam Reinhart. Florida has a really interesting offseason coming up, don't they? They got, Reinhart as a UFA. They got Montour, OEL, Tarasenko, and then Anton Lundell, who we talked about as a restricted free agent. So give me your thoughts just on, maybe let's start with Reinhart and what you think of his season. Do you think it's sustainable? And, does he sign with the Panthers again this upcoming season?
Yeah, so just full disclosure, I'm not an insider. I have no scoops. I don't break anything like that. So I'm just purely guessing for this.
Don't disclose that, Josh. What are you doing? Come on.
But Reinhart, no, I don't think. What he scored, 57 goals. I don't think that's sustainable. I would say he probably doesn't even score 50 again. But, settling into that like 35 goal, 85 point range, I think that's more more realistic for him. And I do think he'll stay in Florida. I know he commented on it that, they've already sort of talked about it, and it seems like it's a deal that's going to get done. So I think he stays there. With no state income tax in Florida, I mean, your team just won the cup.
Yeah.
You get to live by the beach. Like, I mean, why wouldn't you want to stay there, right? I think he's a guy they're going to pay to. Montour, I'm not as sure. He's a guy that's battled some injuries. He's a smaller defenseman, but plays a pretty hard game. So he's someone I could see going elsewhere. But it's a big offseason for them. But yeah, I think they'll find a way to keep Reinhart.
Yeah, it's a really interesting piece to me with Reinhart because, you've got Barkov making 10 million. You got Matt Tkachuk making 9.5. Sam Reinhart's contract is probably valued after the season he just had at over that, but you can't pay this man more than you pay Alexander Barkov. That makes no sense. So I think, it's definitely going to be up to Reinhart if he wants to take a little bit of a hit there to stick around on a team that, has a Stanley Cup window here for a little bit, right? With these players, especially, Barkov and Tkachuk locked up, Gustav Forsling locked up. I mean, these are key pieces, and good goaltending too. I mean, Bobrovsky still 2 seasons. Spencer Knight, hopefully should be able to get healthy and get back in the net here for the Panthers. So it's a team I'm excited about. But I tend to think that he's going to be signing with Florida again as well. And for, maybe 9 mil, I don't know, or 9, like under Tkachuk. I can't see them paying him more than Tkachuk. That makes no sense.
So I will give away my one prediction in my post coming up this weekend.
Here we go.
I'm just predicting Reinhart. It's nothing groundbreaking, but going back to Florida, I think it's going to be 8 years at $9.5 million a year, which would be the exact same deal Tkachuk got. I think that's just perfectly fair. Like, he's not getting more than Barkov. I don't think, teams have that internal cap structure we were talking about earlier. I don't think he'll get more than Barkov. And again, signing for 9.5 in Florida is like signing for a lot more somewhere else without state income tax, right? So, I mean, you're keeping most of your money in Florida. So I think 8 years, 9.5, exact same as Tkachuk. I think that's more than fair. Even though I think Kachuk's a bit better of a player. I think with, 2 years having gone by for that Tkachuk deal, I think 9.5 makes sense for Reinhart.
Just nice timing too on like contract years. That's something I'm going to do an episode on a little bit here in the off season. I don't know how much I put into it, but I mean, damn, this guy, like, this is the king of contract years right here. He scored 57 goals. That makes no sense. I mean, but he's not going to do that again. But I'm kind of with you. I think this is a point per game player and he's going to get paid for it. So either way, they just won the cup. So they know what the hell they're doing over there. Let's move on to a couple other players there. Jake Gensel, we should talk about him really quick. There's been, and this is, I select the rumors that I want to talk about because I'm a Vancouver Canucks fan. And apparently, according to Frank Saravalli, Canucks are going to be making a push to get this player. And, since then I've seen that LA and Nashville are kind of in on that as well. And maybe the Hurricanes re-signing Gensel as well. What do you think his fantasy value would be? Let's do it this way. What do you think his fantasy value would be if he did go to the Canucks? Do you think that we can expect a similar performance that we saw from him in Carolina? Or is it going to be, is it a bit more risky bisky?
I think if he went to Vancouver, I think there's potential for him to even have a better season, maybe a career year, right? I mean, you have Pettersson and Miller and Besser there. I mean, those could be your 4 forwards on the power play right there, along with Quinn Hughes, right? And Gensel's a guy who, he's not overly big. He's not overly fast, but he's super smart. He's willing to go to the gritty areas. He can score goals in a lot of different ways. So I think he's pretty adaptable to whatever team he's on, but I think the Canucks would give him a ton of upside just based on who he'd be playing with there. And he'd still be, part of that top unit probably on the power play. So, and obviously the rumors kind of make sense, right? I mean, Rutherford, Alvin and Tocchet all know him super well from their time with Pittsburgh. So that's definitely a big plus on their side for him too. When players go somewhere, ideally you have some sort of familiarity, whether it's like a player, a teammate, or a staff member. So I think the report there makes a ton of sense, and it will be a little tough to fit him in. Even if they they can't shed Ilya Mikheyev's contract. I think they can still do it, but if they are able to shed Mikheyev's contract, I think it becomes a lot easier and they can fit it no problem and still beef up the blue line too.
I think that's got to be what they're thinking is, especially after this, San Jose Detroit trade. Like, there's been lots of speculation. Like, okay, so to get rid of 3.4 million off the books, you got to give a second rounder. So, what is it going to take to get rid of Mikheyev's contract, which is 4 million plus? Like, is it? It's probably a little higher. I don't even know. I don't know what, maybe a pick and a prospect. I don't know, but yeah. Have you heard anything kind of on that?
I mean, yeah, there was just the report out there that they were looking to offload his contract. I mean, yeah, the Walman deal makes it a little stranger, but the Walman deal was so bizarre. Like, I don't really know if that holds any effect, but it'll definitely cost some sort of sweetener to get Mikheyev off your hands. But I also Mikheyev's overpaid, but I don't think he's overpaid by that much, maybe by like $1 million or $2 million. I mean, which is a lot in the NHL, I guess, but
yeah,
he's still a very serviceable player. Like, he can play like a third line role, maybe even a second line role if needed. So, especially, he was coming off the torn ACL, right? Usually guys take about a year after that to really get back on their feet and find their game again. So I wouldn't be surprised if Mikheyev bounces back next year, whether it's in Vancouver or elsewhere.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be a nice signing for, like you said, wherever he goes. Like, this is a guy that was known for his skating, and when you get an ACL injury, that's going to affect your skating, right? So hopefully he gets it back. I mean, if he does stay with the Canucks, dang, we need some goals from this man. I mean, what are you doing, buddy? Put the biscuit in the basket. I don't understand. All right, but I do think back to Guentzel there. I do think he's the premier free agent to me, not Reinhart, because I do think Reinhart overachieved massively, but I do think Guentzel is still. That's a perennial second rounder in fantasy drafts. To me, it's a guy with 90-point potential on a regular basis, right? With a ceiling for higher. So, all right, I'm going to rapid fire you a couple of these ones here because I do want to respect your time and get you out of here. Steven Stamkos, does he sign with the Tampa Bay Lightning? Yeah, yes or no? What do you think?
I don't know. If I had to guess, I would say no. It's kind of hard to imagine him in any other uniform, but their cap situation is just so tight especially after the trade to bring Ryan McDonagh back. I mean, if he stays in Tampa Bay, it's going to be because they moved out another like sizable contract, or he took a pretty big discount.
Yeah.
And to me, that would be anything under like $6.5 million would be a pretty big discount. So I think he's going to go elsewhere. I really do. And, there was the quotes from him earlier in the year about being sort of unhappy about how the team didn't want to negotiate with an extension with him last offseason. So I could see him staying a little bit bitter about that and going elsewhere.
Yep, absolutely makes sense. I mean, I could see him going to Detroit, honestly. Like, if they're clearing some stuff out, I don't know, maybe they make a splash and pick this guy up. One thing about Stamkos is, like, his floor is really propped up by just access to that insane power play and being a part of that insane power play in Tampa Bay. So, but even strength wise, like it's above average, but it's not anything, blowing the doors off. So I'm interested to see if he does go somewhere else, if he's able to kind of maintain that power play production. My gut says no, and that's going to equal a dip in his production. So yeah, I'm tempering expectations on Stamkos, but I don't know. It would be nice if he signed again in Tampa Bay. I always like when a player kind of just sticks with one team, especially when he's won so much. So that will be weird to see him in another uniform if that does happen. Last player I want to talk to you about here, Jonathan Marchessault of the Vegas Golden Knights. This guy's former Conn Smythe winner, recent 40-goal scorer. These guys are not a dime a dozen in free agency. So obviously the Knights would like to retain him, but they're obviously right up against the cap as it stands. And they've got other guys they need to sign, like Chandler Stevenson, who's most likely going to go somewhere else. Alec Martinez, probably going to go somewhere else. They got, RFAs, Pavel Dorofiev. Like, how do you think Vegas should approach this offseason? And what do you think might happen on July 1st with this team?
I mean, anything could happen, obviously, but I do think they'll find a way to get Marchessault done, even if that means kind of giving him an extra year or two of term to get the cap hit down a little bit. I could see that happening, because he's getting up there. He's like 33. This could potentially be the last time he signs a contract, right? So, I think Vegas will find a way to get that done, though. They have just enough cap space. They don't need to bring back Martinez. They don't need to bring back Stevenson. They have enough defensive depth. They have enough center depth after getting Hurdle. last year. So I think Marchessault is the priority. And, like you said, they have Dorofeev as an RFA, but I don't think he'll cost that much. They have a few contracts too that they could probably, like smaller-ish ones, like that are a couple million that they could probably move out if necessary. But yeah, I think they find a way to keep Marchessault, and I think he probably wants to stay there too.
Their center depth is ridiculous. They can't keep getting away with this, can they, Josh? What
really
kind of circumvention is going to happen for them to sign Marchessault and everybody else? I don't know. They're probably going to get Gensel somehow. I don't know. But yeah, I'm excited about this offseason, man. And I just thank you so much for being here on the show. I love talking about this stuff. I could go on this all day because this is all I do on my days off. All right. I just read hockey stuff. I talk about hockey and I love it. And I really love the work that you're doing over there on the Score. So thanks so much for being here. I want to give you the floor. Just promote or plug anything that's upcoming for you. Maybe give your socials as well for people so they can find you on the interwebs.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at X at Josh Wegman _. Yeah, you can find I tweet out a good chunk of my articles, but you can also find those on the Score app in the NHL news section. Yeah, we got a mock draft that just went out today. If you're into the draft and want to read that, that's out there. And yeah, I've got a free agent predictions post coming this weekend, so stay tuned.
All right. This man is going to help you. All right. With these free agent predictions. All right. And after the interview, he's going to give me all the insider information. I love it. Thank you, Josh, for your service. But that's it, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us here for this conversation. We got some more episodes for you on the way this week, so stay tuned for that. But until then, celebrate your day. Bye for now.